I recently posted a video about a trip to the Algarve and a visit to the Praia de Monte Clérigo near Algarve. There's a track site on the rocks next to that beach in which archaeologists have identified fossilized Neanderthal footprints that date back about 80,000 years ago. There's a link to that video attached here. I've received a lot of interest and discussion on that video, including many comments of people wanting to have more detailed explanations of how the fossilized footprints were actually made. In this video, I'm going to explain how the prints were made, how they were fossilized, and how archaeologists know who made them and how old they are. Before we begin, I should explain that I'm no geologist, and nor am I a professional archaeologist. I'm a teacher who's studying archaeology, and I'm exploring Portugal's prehistory. I'm going to explain these fossilized footprints based on my own research, and I'll explain where I get the information from. My main source of information is the paper that was published about the discovery of these fossilized footprints. That paper was written by a large group of archaeologists, geologists, chemists, earth science, geographers, and other scientists in various disciplines from universities and institutions around the world. Their work was scrutinized by other scientists, and the resulting paper was approved by experts from various fields. I'll also use easily accessible sources like Wikipedia, which is something that regular folks like me can use for information and learning. To begin with, these are fossils of footprints, which means they're not fossils of the Neanderthals themselves, but of the tracks they left behind. These are called trace fossils or ichnofossils. When we talk about fossils, we often think about dinosaurs or trilobites and similar sorts of things. These are parts of the animal that have fossilized or become stone. Over long periods of time, the organic elements of the animal, usually the bones or the shells or other hard parts, get replaced by minerals and become stone copies of the original skeleton themselves. Trace fossils, or ichnofossils, are not parts of the animals themselves, but some record that showed that they were there. They are usually tracks that the animal made in mud or sand or some other surface that over years has become fossilized. There are many sites of fossilized dinosaur footprints all around Portugal, including the famous natural monument of dinosaur footprints in Urain, north of Lisboa. So these Neanderthal footprints are trace fossils. How did they form? Around 80,000 years ago, Neanderthals were living all around Iberia, including the area that's now Portugal. This was before Homo sapiens, people like us, arrived in the area. Our species only started living in Portugal around 35,000 years ago. Neanderthals lived all over the area, including by the seashore. This was during the Ice Age, and so sea levels were much lower than they are now because of all the water trapped in the glaciers up in the north. There are many maps that show what the sea level was like at that time. Here's a map from the Archaeological Museum in Sintra that shows that during the Ice Age, the shoreline was much further out all across Portugal than it is now. So some people pointed this out in my last video and said that these footprints must have been made far from the shore and not on sand dunes like the scientists said. But sea level has risen and fallen many times over the ages. The Ice Age itself included warmer periods when the glaciers were in retreat and the sea levels were rising, and other areas that were colder with more glaciers and the sea levels were lower. It's considered that we're living in an ice age, the late Cenozoic ice age. We're just in a warm period right now. There are various studies showing how the sea level's risen and fallen over time. And I found a research paper that showed levels during the time period that the Neanderthals were living, around about 80,000 years ago. And it showed the sea level rising and falling to different levels. It was from an American author, and so it was really focusing on sea levels in the Americas. But it was also used in a paper that included measurements from Agadir, which is in Morocco. So it's relevant for Portugal. You can see the diagram here, and at 80,000 years ago, you can see that the sea level was a bit lower than now, but there's a dotted line there that shows that it could have been higher, and the measurements from Agadir show that that's where the sea level was. So the sea level at 80,000 years ago was more or less the same as it is now, and therefore these footprints were Neanderthals walking near the beach. And so the Neanderthals in the area of what's now Monte Clérigo were living near the shoreline. And as they walked around and hunted red deer and other animals, they would have left footprints in the sand and in the sandy soil of the area. And under certain conditions, those footprints could have persisted. The scientists point out in their paper that only under certain conditions could footprints have been preserved to become fossilized. It's worth pointing out that the image that the scientists created using AI tools, and they improved on it, is only a suggestion of what the scene could have been like. Those sandy dunes may have been there, but if you go to Monte Clérigo now, the area around the beach includes sandy areas with sandy soil and plants growing, and that could have been what it was like when the Neanderthals were there. So Neanderthals were walking around, and at some point they were walking under certain conditions where the ground was probably wet and their footprints were preserved, and then was quickly filled in with blowing sand. The wet soil underneath that had the prints would have had a different consistency than the sand that was being blown in and filling up the prints. Over time, these layers of sand and soil would have formed into sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock is one of the three main categories of rock that includes igneous and metamorphic. Sedimentary rock is formed as layers of soil and sand get covered and get compacted and cemented. They turn into stone. Sedimentary rock is the main form of rock in which fossils are found. This is because sedimentary rock is formed at temperatures far lower than the other types of rock, and therefore fossils can be preserved. The sedimentary rock at Monte Clérigo is a special kind of sedimentary rock called eolianite. This is formed by sediments that are blown in by the wind, like sand. Often sedimentary rock is made by sediments that precipitates through water. One of the most common types of eolianite is coastal limestone formed from sand dunes and similar sorts of structures. And limestone gets formed fairly quickly, well under 1 million years. The scientists dated the age of this eolianite using a technique called optical stimulated luminescence. This is a very common used technique to date non-organic matter, and it's based on the fact that crystals buried within a rock, like quartz, hold energy when they are not exposed to sunlight. So scientists took a sample of the rock from this bed, being careful to not expose it to sunlight by using a black plastic sheet to cover it and wrap it up. And then they took it away and measured the energy that was stored. Using this technique, they could date this rock to 78,000 years ago, with a margin of error of 5,000 years more or less. Understand that this rock ledge of eolianite would have been covered by other layers over the years, and so the fossils would have been preserved. At some point, the rock weathers and breaks away, and sheets of it will fall off. Because of the different consistency of the soils when the rocks were being formed, that is an obvious place where the rock might break. Again, I'm no geologist. I'm a teacher. If you're skeptical of my expertise, I encourage you to go and read the original paper yourself. There's a link down below. And do your own research. If you find anything that I've left out or misrepresented, please leave a comment down below. I'm always happy to discuss things with people who have new information or new data. But if you want to share some theory that has no evidence behind it, or if you want to criticize scientists and say that they're trying to deceive us, then please take your magical thinking and conspiracy theories and go discuss it with some AI slop video channel. I've met many scientists, and they are all serious seekers of the truth. They might not get it right the first time. That's part of the scientific process. But they're determined to be accurate and represent the world in a truthful manner. I hope you've enjoyed this video explaining the science behind these fossilized footprints. If you want to find out for yourself, check out my other video and then go down to the Praia de Monte Clérigo and see the prints for yourself. Thanks for watching.